in the last few centuries, science has progressed a lot. And if you try to find out people who have contributed to this development, you will find most of the names are from the Western countries. They are either European or American. But at the same time, there are some Indian scientists who have made a lasting impression in the field of science, who have contributed a lot. So the name that comes very prominently in this area is Sir Jagadish Chandra Bose. He was born in a small village which is now in Bangladesh, close to Dhaka. Earlier it was part of India. And on 30th of November 1858, his father was in a government service, and his job was close to Kolkata, so he was living in Kolkata. So this boy had to start his education in Kolkata itself. Now that was the time when he started his primary education. That was the time when majority of English medium schools were opened. Christian missionaries have started these schools. British rule was almost settled in India by that time. And so most of the government officers used to send their children to English medium schools. But Bhagwan Chandra, the father of Jagadish Chandra, decided that his son should get primary education in mother tongue. So he was sent to a Bengali medium school. And Jagadish Chandra in his autobiography writes that in this Bengali medium school, he used to, on a bench he used to sit in the middle. On the left hand side he had the butcherman's son, on the right hand side he had a fisherman's son. So the butcherman's son would tell, if you cut the goat, what type of blood veins they have, etc., etc. The person who was sitting on the right hand side would tell him information about various fishes. So that's how he got interested in animals by interacting with his colleagues. At home, he had developed a garden. His father had a big house, so he had there open space, so he had developed a garden, variety of plants. Not only plants, he had a small pond in which he had some fishes and also tortoise. So he has observed the growth of a plant. He saw how plants change color, a variety of things. And this observation, made a place in his mind. As a result, even though he was trained in physics, he conducted research in botany. And I'll explain to you what work later on he did. I said this at this moment because, these childhood impressions remain throughout your life. And therefore, my appeal to parents is that they should ensure that they provide enriched experiences to their children, which come handy and useful in their entire life. So after his primary education, he had his high school in a school called Hare's English Medium School. Then he had his graduation in Kolkata in St. Xavier's College. There are variety. There are St. Xavier's College in various cities. Kolkata also has one. And after graduation, as many parents feel, even Bhagwan Chandra felt that his son should become a medical doctor. So he had sent Jagadish Chandra to become medical doctor to London. But as the fate was destined, he somehow developed nausea for chemicals like chloroform, and he said that this is not my field of study. So he left medical education and joined Christ College in Cambridge to study physics, where he met many prominent British physicists. And Christ College is one of the colleges in Cambridge. Cambridge, you might be knowing, is a very famous place for scientific research. It has the largest number of Nobel Prize winners at this moment. And there are many, many colleges. Christ College is one of them, where Charles Darwin, a very famous scientist, had studied. And this is where he had his graduation. And then in order to conduct higher research, he came to London and studied under Lord Rayleigh, conducted research and submitted his thesis for doctoral work. You might be knowing PhD is the degree given to the new research that is submitted. But this man was given DSc, that is Doctor of Science, which is considered to be a higher degree than PhD for his work. So you can imagine the person who had a Doctor of Science from University of London. So he could have got job anywhere. He was in fact invited. He was in fact offered positions there, and many of his friends and advisors told him not to go back to India, stay there and continue research because the facilities were available there. But this man, being a patriot in true sense, said, I will go back because I want to show to the world that even good research can be conducted in India. He wanted to create the culture of research here. So in 1885, he came back to Kolkata, and he got a job at the Presidency College to teach physics as a lecturer. Soon he realized that he was paid a less salary than his British counterpart. Then he went on strike, and finally he could convince the British officer that the Indian person should also be paid equal to the British because they are doing the same job. So he was a very famous teacher, very popular teacher. Sometimes he is also known as Acharya. Like Prafulla Chandra Ray, he is also called Acharya many times. And two names I'll give you. One was Meghnad Saha and another is Satyendranath Bose. These are the two big names, once again in physics, who were his students. There are many other names, but these are the two very prominent names. So he could develop the culture of research in his students. On his own front, he did a very pioneering work, very, very, very important work. And I'll explain to you what it is. Firstly, he decided that he should work in the frontier area. What was the frontier area at that moment? The frontier area was electromagnetic radiations. We know X-rays, we know gamma rays, we know light rays through which we see the things. We know ultraviolet rays, we know infrared rays, there are radio waves, a variety of waves are there. One physicist named Maxwell came out with the idea. He said that all these are actually electromagnetic radiations with a difference in wavelength. So certain wavelength we can see, certain wavelength we cannot see, but these are all electromagnetic radiations. So he focused his attention on electromagnetic radiations, and he proved that using electromagnetic waves, he can transmit sound waves from one place to another without wire. This is called wireless communication. And he conducted an experiment in a big hall in Presidency College, where he switched on the button here and the bell in the laboratory rang. There was no wire connection. This was a wireless signal that went there. And when he published this work, he was invited by Royal Society to present his work. He went to Royal Society and presented his entire work through experiment and showed that the sound waves can be transmitted from one place to another with the help of electromagnetic radiations, and that is the beginning of wireless telegraphy, wireless communication. Actually, he should have been given Nobel Prize for this work, but somehow it so happened that Marconi was given Nobel Prize, an Italian technician, because he, using these principles, transmitted radio signals from one part of the Atlantic to the other part. So he became the originator of radio, and for this work he was given Nobel Prize. But the original idea is from Jagadish Chandra Bose. In fact, when after his lecture, a newspaper reporter asked him, "Sir, the work that you have done has a tremendous industrial potential. Are you thinking in that direction?" He said, "No, I am not worrying about industry. I am not worrying about profit. I only made this knowledge available, and this is available to the world." So that was his thinking at that moment. And after making presentation, he once again came back to Calcutta. In those days, after coming back and going, was taking a lot of time. But then he came back and he continued his work. After coming back, he started working in a very different area, which no one would have imagined. As I told you, that childhood impression of plants which he had attracted him to work in the field of botany. Botany is plant science. So he felt that this plant also has emotions like animals. We can express through words, we can express through sound, we can express our emotions through our action. Plants cannot. Plants cannot move from one place to another. Plants cannot make sound. Even then they have emotions, and they express through some movement which our eyes cannot capture. So he has developed an instrument called Cresco, and using the Cresco, he could show that when plants, if you strike a plant, it responds through emotion. If you put poisonous material at the roots of plant, then it also shows emotions. And using the Cresco, he could show that. He was once again invited to Royal Society to present his work. This time, botanist, the biologist there did not respect him much, because they felt, "You are a physics person, why are you entering into our field?" And they said, "Oh, he should not be recognized as a botanist." But the research doesn't remain hidden. Ultimately, he got the name as a botanist. So you can see a person who was trained in physics used his knowledge of physics to conduct research in botany. This is what is called interdisciplinary research. So he felt that there is a need to have interdisciplinary research, and he wanted that there should be an institution to promote this. And 1917, he had established an institution which is now named as Bose Research Institute, which is located in Calcutta, and it is now supported by Department of Science and Technology. Someone who has interest in the disciplinary research should approach this institute and, if possible, get entry into that. So he continued teaching after that also, and especially created an impression that even Indian scientists can contribute in the frontier areas. So he lived in this world for 80 years. As I told you, 1858 was his birth year. 1937, at the age of 80, he died. But he has left a legacy, the legacy of frontier research without much facilities. Presidency College was not providing him many facilities. Many times he had to spend money from his own pocket to make instruments, but he did it. But he showed to the world that even Indian scientists can contribute, and created a environment of research in that area, and therefore you could see people like Meghnad Saha, Satyendranath Bose, who followed his path and contributed a lot to this area. So I thought at this moment we should remember this man who has made us proud in 19th and 20th century, and his contribution is certainly a laudable contribution, very important contribution. And all of us now, we are taking the benefits of wireless communication. The mobile telephone is nothing but the wireless communication. Television signals, radio signals, they are all coming through air without any wire. So he is the originator. So we must remember his work and pay homage to him and try to see something, to see that we do something similar, and that would be a real homage to him. Thank you very much.